Hey folks, it's Fernando doing a quick video for More Survivalists. I just wanted to address some of the comments that I've been getting from the previous video, relocating to Chile. I think there were some very interesting ones, and I'd like to go through them because some pretty good points were brought up, not only regarding relocation in Chile, but in general about the overall strategy and attitude you should have when considering moving anywhere in general. Okay, Sweden or Germany, you'll freeze your nuts off there in winter. One thing very nice here in LA was 83 degrees today and a bit toasty, but sure beats the blowing snow and sub-zero temps. Spain better, but their economy is so bad that young people are committing suicide. Very, very sad. Great point regarding weather. You know, climate. If there's one thing that I really don't like about Ireland in general is the weather. The weather sucks. I mean, Ireland, Great Britain, either island is going to be having awful weather, and I've lived in very cold places. I lived in Boston, which is very, very cold. It's not so much the cold, because it's really not that cold. It's the damp, gray, and lack of sunlight. That's what really gets to you. I already came here knowing that, and knowing that I'm not particularly sensitive to it, but man, as years go by, it does get to you. And if it's something of a problem already, then don't even think about moving to a place where the climate is so dark, where it's so cloudy all the time. But yeah, absolutely, great point regarding weather. Weather is, you know, first of all, I always consider safety and physical security. That's essential. If you don't have that, you cannot have freedom of any kind. If you're not free to walk around, you know, without the constant real risk of being harmed, then you don't have freedom whatsoever. Anyone that thinks that you can have freedom in a dangerous place where you cannot walk freely on the streets, you're kidding yourself. You're lying to yourself. That's simply not true. You may lie to yourself for years, living in a place where you're not enjoying real freedom, even if you have a lot of money. You know, sometimes people bring that up as, yeah, well, I'm rich, I'm living in Argentina, or I'm rich, I'm living in Thailand or Panama, and I'm living in a gated community. You're living in a golden cage, but still a cage nonetheless. All right, you may have your gated community, you may have your armored car, which sometimes is essential in some places, but you're moving in little boxes and in little cages because you're not really free to physically move around without a real risk of putting your life in danger in some places. So that's also that would be the main thing. Then corruption ruins everything. There's nothing that you can really plan and do in a place where there's a lot of corruption. Many parts in South America have that huge problem. Lots of corruption, and Chile would be one of the better countries regarding that, but it's not nearly as good as some of the other developed countries that people may be coming from. Besides that, yeah, I think that, you know, safety, corruption, the economy, cost of living, and then definitely climate would be one of the bigger factors to keep in mind. Cold weather, even if that doesn't bother you, it does change quite a bit. Some people love it, and I've read it in the comments from folks saying so. They just love snow, winter sports and such. Yeah, that's great. Now the thing is that with cold weather, you have an added factor to consider, especially here talking survival. Regarding survival specifically, cold weather is an important factor. It's actually one of the most important ones because it's something that you'll have to address one way or another, because you're going to be needing fuel to stay alive and not freeze to death in some parts of the world. If that's one of the places that you're keeping in mind, that's an important factor. Do I like frying all, you know, summer long and all spring long like I did in Argentina? Maybe not my favorite climate, you know, but yeah, a nice warm weather by the sea. I like being by the sea because it kind of brings nice temperatures overall. But it is something to keep in mind. In Spain, as the comment says, yeah, better, but the economy, people committing suicide, yeah, the economy sucks, if that's a problem. But at the other, on the other hand, if some folks are saying that they're independently rich and they don't care about cost of living and such, so they can move anywhere, well, if you're so rich, then you wouldn't have a problem living in Spain, especially not in the part where some of the richest people in the planet actually live. So it depends on your own circumstances. Now, if money is an issue, then definitely Chile is something that you want to be very careful about, because Chile is extremely expensive compared to other countries in Latin America. Chile is actually very, very expensive, and for the same quality of life, you are going to be paying quite a bit more. And this is not me saying, I actually saw some videos of expats in Chile. That was one of the things people said. Actually, one guy was just saying, if you don't have 3 years worth of savings so as to live in Chile, don't even bother going there. And this was a guy actually trying to promote Chile as a good destination. So keep that in mind. It's not really as cheap as it may seem sometimes. You should put the phone down and make more eye contact when talking to your computer. Very distracting. Yeah, sorry, I just have to do it for reading the comments. You know, if it's not this, it would be a piece of paper. I believe you're saying bypass South America altogether. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Unless you really have a reason to go there, unless you are really dedicated to the idea of living in South America because you just love it and that's something that you have to do in your life, guys, I'm not saying not do it, but be completely honest about it. Be honest about what you're doing it, and know very well both the advantages, which are usually very well promoted anywhere in the world, any country that you look up information. The first thing you're going to be finding is what people that want you moving there are going to be putting out there. The good things, the pros of living in such a country. The disadvantages, those you will have to dig deeper so as to find out. Do that as well. Any place you're considering, do look up the disadvantages. I was actually watching one of the videos of a guy that was actually leaving Chile now, right? And he was, now that he was leaving, he was being a little bit more open regarding the things that he didn't like that much. It was like a 15-minute video, right? And I skipped through some of the parts because they were things that I had already addressed and said myself, because I know exactly the kind of things people from a developed nation will struggle with in a place like Chile. Said and done. I mean, 5 minutes later, the guy was complaining about the queues and lines for the most ridiculous things. How banks were closed at 2 p.m. and how you had to wait in line for everything. I advanced a little bit more, like minute 10 or so, and the guy was heated up, was actually kind of talking loudly and such, and he was saying, yeah, because you need a notary for everything, and the notary is limited in the amounts of notaries that you have in the country. So yeah, the notary thing is very common in South America. In Argentina, it's the same thing. For pretty much any paperwork that you need, you're going to be needing a notary authorizing it. All right. It seems not make sense in developed nations where that's rarely needed and such, but in South America, very, very common. Now, the thing is that notaries, they are by number a very limited number of them. All right, if you're the notary of a certain district of Buenos Aires, you are going to be the only notary in that part of Buenos Aires. No one else will be able to notarize anything other than you. That means that it's pretty much for life, and until you die or give that. Usually, you know what? It's fathers passing over the notary to their kids, to their children. That happens in most cases because they can pretty much decide who they're going to be leaving their notary to. So it's extremely corrupt in many ways, and you have to wait in line forever. And the prices, they pretty much charge whatever they want. It's a very different type of situation, and people in developed nations rarely see something like that. So they're not used to it. Paying with credit card, you pay with your credit card, take my money, the guy was saying. Yeah, they're not going to be just taking your money. Many times, actually, in Latin America, they will require some sort of ID, because just a credit card is not enough. How do they know if you just didn't bash someone over the head and you're just using his credit card right now? How do you know that you didn't put a gun to someone's head and you're now using his PIN number? Because that's the kind of thing that happens in places like Latin America. It's not the kind of things that people in developed nations think about. I go to the gas station right now and they're not going to be thinking that. It's not going to be crossing their minds. in South America it happens all the time because that's the way people live over there. So you're gonna be trying to pay for something, like the guy said, please take my money, kind of like ironically, and the guy's gonna be saying, yeah, well, give me some ID, and you're gonna be bringing some sort of ID that is not what they're used to because it's not an ID from that specific country, and they're gonna be saying, well, that's not good enough. Happened to a guy in Brazil, not that long ago. He was mentioning it in Takeo da Silva. He was mentioning he couldn't believe, they're asking me for a Brazilian ID. I don't have a Brazilian ID. I'm not Brazilian. I'm American. Well, they don't care. And you come across a clerk or even a store manager that thinks this way, he's not going to be going for it, because he'd rather not sell you something that risks having problems later on, And there's always the thing of, yeah, if I can piss a gringo or an American guy, even better. That probably made his day if he has a certain animosity towards you, which happens all the time, and the kind of thing that you guys don't understand. In general, you're more likely to find that across, and it's not just because you are maybe an American or some other or European. People in South America may do that to one another for no reason other than just being stressed and upset because of how crappy life is in general in those places, especially for people working in retail and making very, very little money. So customer service in general is going to be pretty bad as well. Thank you, Fernando. I'm from Northern Europe, but have lived and worked in well, this is actually a good one. I have lived and worked in third world countries in Africa and South America for many years. And with those years abroad as an experience, I try to tell my friends really how amazing it is in a first world country. What people complain about in Europe and Northern Europe is just petty things, really. They really don't understand how freaking good it is back home. The day-to-day life in first world is so easy compared to third world. I think it comes down to many people is just being spoiled when they complain about what they think is a real problem here, and naive when it comes to relocating. What they think is a big problem here is just a normal thing over there. Bugging out to a third world country and you don't have the education, not being a millionaire to get a secure mansion, or knowing the language, don't know a thing about the cultural, local manners, fun. Well, yeah, I completely agree with that. And the idea of, yeah, I'm going to be going to a third world country because I'm a millionaire. If you're a millionaire, go somewhere better. I mean, supposedly you can afford to do so. So why would you go to a third world country if you have a lot of money? If you don't have a lot of money, you're still much better off in a place where the middle class actually exists and it hasn't been wiped out or practically eliminated in many ways. Yeah, I got a comment from someone from Chile, actually kind of angry, and any rude comments or disrespectful ones I just erase, so don't even bother. But yeah, there's always someone that's going to be getting pissed when you talk poorly about a country, especially his country. I guess I'm maybe too cold or too objective. I really try to detach myself from personal feelings and such, and try to look at it objectively. Maybe I'm too successful at that. I mean, I have no problem criticizing my own country, even though I feel very strongly about it. I'm as Argentine as it gets, right? And I feel very strongly about my own country. But at the same time, when I look at it from an analytical point of view, I have no other option but to be honest regarding all those things, regarding the corruption, regarding the economic problems. I think the guy that was from Chile was saying that it's not a third world country. It is. It's maybe the country that's closest to being a developed nation right now from South America, but as of right now, it's still a developing country. And it's not a first world country. The GDP is not there for it. The infrastructure is not there. The quality of life. I was reading articles about Chile maybe officially, at least regarding the GDP, becoming a first world nation. And I think it was $22,000 PP GDP in 2018. That would be in the most favorable condition if it keeps growing, which is having a little bit of problems with right now, Chile, because it's getting too expensive. It's just not making sense anymore, and people that actually move there had vineyards and such. They're complaining that cost of electricity is going up. I think it went up almost like practically like 100% in the past 5 years. The cost of hiring employers is becoming more and more expensive. Labor is going up in price a lot, and it's just not as good. It's not nearly as profitable as it used to be. That kind of instability is what you have in third world countries. That's what makes it a third world country, the instability, the constant social struggle and unrest. You know, it's not just the GDP and the lack of quality of living compared to other places. It's that kind of instability. So let's suppose that in best case scenario, by 2018, Chile does become a first world country officially. I wouldn't even consider it one until it has passed, 10, 20 years later on, which gives you an entire generation of people brought up in a first world country. That's what really, at least to me, makes it, from the moment you have an entire generation that was brought up in stability, that makes it a first world country. If not, you keep seeing the kind of things that you see now. You see the protests of the students on the streets of Chile protesting all the time, being clubbed over the head by the police and arrested, and that struggle that is so typical of South America, of Latin America. This is getting a little bit longer than intended, but I think there's some interesting stuff. Third world problems, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I will stay in Ohio, good stuff. Yeah, I mean, yes, if you're in Ohio, and again, guys, if you're in the United States, if you're in Europe, either way, you're probably better off relocating within those. Relocating within the United States, which each state has like a little bit of a country on its own thing going for it. That's very interesting, that's very appealing. I think that gives you great options without having to leave the United States. In Europe, it's pretty much the same thing. Now with the European Union, you have the option of moving within the European Union and finding places that you can, that work in your advantage, giving your specific position in life at that moment. If you're retired, what do people in UK do when they retire? They go to the coast of Spain. They buy a place there and live in the warm, nicer weather with great medical care for the rest of their life. Their golden years are spent in the Golden Coast. There's places in Spain, in southern Spain, where if you actually do what I suggest in my book as part of the research for relocating, looking at the different street views from Google Maps, you see that the for sale signs of houses in southern Spain, in many parts, are actually in English. They have such a large English-speaking community, lots of German as well, but so many expats living there, and they do so for a good reason. It's more affordable, has great climate, and even better medical care than what they have back home. So it makes sense all around. And they actually have the right to live there because of the European Union. Many times people in UK complain about immigrants. They forget about all the immigrants that they send to other countries, especially in their years where they're not really that productive anymore. It's completely fake to think that because you have money to maybe buy a place and live without working just in your retirement, that you're a productive member of society. Those are the actual years that in which you're not. I mean, it's for a country, it's much better to have a healthy 20-year-old guy that's coming over, making money, spending it in all sorts of ways for the following 60 years than having a guy that is in his 60s, his 70s, and has maybe 20 years left, and he's not going to be productive in terms of making money and such, and especially he's at an age where the cost of medical treatment, medical care for him is going to be quite high. He's going to be he's probably going to be dying there. That alone is going to be a huge, massive cost, outweighing pretty much anything that he brings in. And if he's having medical conditions like 90% of old people do, it's going to be especially expensive. So yeah, it kind of makes sense, and it's nice to have people coming over and spending money, but it works both ways. All right. What do you think? Here's a good one. My wife is from Chile, been there and I love it, have thought about moving there. Well, ask your wife about why she's not there already, why you haven't met your wife in Chile and she left. One of the things that I've come across very often is people that have left and they're always talking, yeah, I'm going to be going back. No, it's so much better back home. I'm going to be moving back. And they never actually do. All right. It happens a lot with many people I know from Argentina, and you have to understand, it's so complex. Many times I mean, I find myself saying that I'm going to be going back anytime soon, especially when people are, very insistent about, yeah, we really miss you, we really want you coming back here, and they really don't feel comfortable when you suggest that maybe you're not going to be coming back. So your reflex answer is, yeah, well, yeah, maybe we're going to be going back soon, yeah, and such. And partially, you're very honest regarding missing them and missing many things of your country. But in other words, you're just telling them what they want to hear, so they feel better about it. Because it's never nice to hear that where you are, it's not as good where someone else may be. That's never nice, right? And it kind of hurts, especially when it comes to family and people that are still there and such. So that may be part of it. I don't go by what people say they're going to be doing in the future. I go by what people are actually ended up doing. Regarding this person's wife, honestly, talk with her about moving to Chile or not. If you're both in the same in the same side there, probably go for it. But there's a good chance that your wife left Chile for very good reasons, and wherever it is that you are, it's much better off than Chile. What do you think of all the Central Americans pouring into the United States in regard to future stability? Well, first of all, that's a great point. Why is it that so many people from Central America, South America are pouring, as you say, into the United States? Because the United States is so much better than Central and South America. All right, very ironic, given that you have all the guys promoting Chile, Argentina, Central America, and whatnot as great destinations, when you have, on the other hand, millions of people pouring into the United States because Latin America is really not nearly as good as it's sometimes portrayed. Bring a wad of bribe cash, should be okay. Yeah, good luck with that. So this is the final one, last one. So what are your thoughts on Spain? You mentioned it here, but you choose Ireland. So curious on your thoughts on Spain. And how are things in Ireland? Things as always. Rose, Lasty. Yeah, things are in Ireland are pretty much as they've always been. It's pretty stable in many ways. It's a very safe environment, which is one of the things that appeal to me the most. Good education as well. If I had to say something, it would be the climate. The climate thing is kind of getting to us a little bit, especially because we're used to so much warmer weather. It is one of those things that we knew. When I did the research for moving here, I knew that would be one of the negative things. But it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to go through it, and especially go through it in many years. I think that is in general you have. Ireland is still a pretty good place to live in general, in all terms, but weather would be one of the downsides. Then being an island, that's something that has its advantages in some ways. In certain worst case scenarios, the idea of being isolated is better. But as I always say, you cannot just go by what would be better for a worst case scenario. You have to look at what's working also in normal times, which is where you spend most of your life in normal, non-end of the world scenarios. So in that regard, being in an island is kind of a problem, because you have a more restrictive movement. You always have to get on a plane or a boat to go anywhere. While on the other hand, if you're in Europe, in the mainland of Europe, you are already there, and it's just easier to travel around. If you like traveling in Europe, it's pretty much ideal, because you can go anywhere with your car, seeing actually very different cultures, different countries, just in what it would take you to maybe get out of your state, you're in another country, right? You can get from Spain to Germany, and what it takes you, you may not even be leaving one of the larger states by driving that same distance. Here you go through 2-3 different countries. And that's nice. You get to travel a lot and such, but being in an island is you're always requiring getting on board of a plane, which given recent events, I'm not as fond of as I used to be. I much prefer driving if distances are not really that bad and I can get away with it. And getting into a car or even a train. Trains are pretty great as well, especially in Europe. The train system is pretty good, so that's something that it's actually quite appealing. And about Spain, actually Spain is looking better and better each passing day, especially because Spain has that thing that you're missing here, which is the nice weather. Cost of living is even cheaper than in Ireland as well, Spain. So you have the cheaper cost of living, you have the nicer weather, and to some degree you have even the better medical care. Culturally speaking, Spain, you have to be very careful where you go. And this was one of the big disadvantages that I saw in Spain in general, which was that people don't speak Spanish in Spain, which is kind of a surprise for you guys in the United States, thinking that everyone speaks Spanish. Actually, in Spain, it's one of the places where you have to be very careful, because you have Catalan, you have Vasco, you have Gallego, you have all these dialects, or depending on who you're asking, dialect or different language. Whatever case, they're not speaking Spanish. And it's a big problem, because if you have kids like I do, you have to be very careful of where they end up in, because having a kid that only speaks a language that's spoken in a city only, as it happens in Spain many times, you're giving him a huge disability in terms of language. You know, he's going to be speaking a language that's only spoken in one city. That is simply not viable for me. Now, the good news is that in the coast of Spain, you have in the southern coast of Spain, the Costa del Sol, in the southern one, you have people speaking normal, regular Spanish. They have I think it's a Andalusia accent or such, but it's still Spanish. So they're going to be speaking Spanish. Your kids are going to be being brought up in a language that's actually useful. And also, you have the advantage of, in the southern coast of Spain, you have such a large English-speaking community, Germans as well. There's pretty much a lot of expat community in southern Spain, mostly English-speaking. So it's very easy to mingle and have, you know, play groups for your kids with people that speak English and want to learn Spanish. So they like the idea of someone that is actually good bilingual at it, so as to, you know, make that trade-off. I'm going to be practicing a little bit of English. We're going to be practicing a little bit of Spanish and such. So it works well as well. That makes things a little bit easier. If you have kids, language is pretty important. You cannot have a kid, at least I see it as, a kid should be speaking, you know, at least for us Westerners, you know, not Asian countries, English or Spanish. You have to know at least one of those. If you know both of them, that's ideal. It's opening the entire emerging economies of Latin America, like Chile, that's supposed to be a developed country anytime soon. You have that. In the United States, speaking Spanish is also a huge deal, because it allows you to interact with a large section of the population as well. So Spanish and English are, the way I see it, your main languages. Especially with Spanish, French, Italian, you are going to be understanding quite a bit of it. Okay, you're not going to be fluent at it, but it's going to be, if you want to learn later Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, any of the Latin languages, it's going to be so much easier knowing Spanish, right? So those are all advantages of living in Spain. And I'm actually considering Spain quite a bit. Don't be surprised now if sometime down the road I ended up there. It's actually a good choice. Problems being, in terms of the economy, you know, still struggling quite a bit. It is getting better. We have to say that as well, as it was brought up, the people committing suicide. Yeah, people do that when the economy collapses, or when there's a major economic crisis. You know, places in Spain where they have, like, you know, insane amount of unemployment. You know, people have actually left because of that. They don't have, they don't find jobs. So lots of reasons why people, you know, if that's something that is going to be affecting you, you definitely want to keep it in mind. Lots of folks that move to Spain, English-speaking ones, end up working for academies or schools as English teachers. But there's a ton of them already, so it may not be as much of a gold mine as you may think it is. And lots of people already there that do speak English and are teaching it. So you have to have actually a good job as you go there, because the unemployment rate is still very, very high. So that's another issue to keep in mind. Guys, this ended up being a video about replying to Chile and Ireland and Spain. So I'm going to be titling that. Guys, take care. Have a great day. See you in our next video.